My name is Catherine, 57 years old, a widow living in a modest house in California. I was feeling happy when I received a call from my daughter Amanda after 6 months of silence. But my happiness turned to shock when she called only to ask for my beach house keys for her honeymoon. Yes, my daughter got married without inviting me. Her exact words still ring in my ears. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, and if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons. I became a single mother when Amanda was only 12 years old. My husband Thomas died in a car accident on his way home from work. It was raining heavily that night, and a drunk driver hit his car head-on. I still remember getting that devastating phone call from the hospital. My world shattered instantly. Amanda was at a friend's house for a sleepover when it happened. Having to pick her up and tell her that her father was gone was the hardest thing I ever had to do. The following years were incredibly difficult. I had to work 2 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day, I worked as an administrative assistant at a local company, and in the evenings, I waitressed at a restaurant near our home. The hours were long and exhausting, but Amanda needed stability and support. She was deeply affected by her father's death and went through a period of rebellion and sadness. I made sure to be there for her emotionally, even when I was physically exhausted. Despite the hardships, Amanda and I developed a close relationship during her high school years. She was a bright student with a passion for science. I remember staying up late helping her with science projects, quizzing her for tests, and celebrating her achievements. She would often make us both hot chocolate, and we'd talk about her day or her dreams for the future. She wanted to become a doctor, inspired by the medical team that tried to save her father. My love for Amanda was unconditional. I turned down several dating opportunities because I wanted to focus solely on raising her. A colleague once asked me out for dinner, but I politely declined. My daughter needed me, and I couldn't bear the thought of dividing my attention. Maybe it was overprotective, but I wanted to ensure she never felt abandoned after losing her father. The financial sacrifices were significant. When Amanda got accepted to a prestigious university to study pre-med, I sold my mother's jewelry, including her wedding ring, and a vintage necklace that had been in our family for generations. It broke my heart to part with these heirlooms, but Amanda's education was more important to me. I never told her about selling these items. I wanted her to focus on her studies without worrying about money. I supported Amanda in every way I could as she pursued her medical dreams. I drove her to volunteer at hospitals, helped her prepare for interviews, and spent countless hours researching scholarship opportunities. When she got accepted to medical school, I was overjoyed. All those years of hard work and sacrifice seemed worth it. She was on her way to becoming the doctor she had always dreamed of being. However, I began noticing gradual changes in Amanda's attitude during her university years. The calls home became less frequent, and when we did talk, she seemed distracted and uninterested in our conversations. Initially, I attributed this to the stress of her studies and her growing independence. I told myself it was normal for children to create distance as they matured. Still, it hurt when she would cut our calls short or forget important family dates. I made countless efforts to maintain our relationship despite her growing distance. I would send care packages to her dorm, drive 2 hours to take her out for lunch, and always made myself available whenever she needed to talk. I attended every parents' weekend and orientation, even when Amanda seemed embarrassed by my presence. I tried not to take it personally, remembering how I felt about my own parents at that age. Then 3 years ago, something unexpected happened. My Aunt Sophia, my mother's sister, passed away and left me her beach house in Malibu. Aunt Sophia and I had always been close, especially after my mother passed. She never had children of her own and treated me like a daughter. The beach house was a beautiful property, right on the shoreline, worth significantly more than anything I had ever owned. It came as a complete surprise as she never mentioned leaving it to me. Amanda's attitude toward me changed dramatically when she learned about the beach house. Suddenly, she was calling more often and visiting on weekends. At first, I was simply happy to have my daughter back in my life. I didn't question her renewed interest. We would spend weekends at the beach house, and for a while it felt like we had recaptured our close relationship. Looking back, I should have recognized the red flags, but I was blinded by my desire to reconnect with my only child. The real turning point in our relationship came when Amanda introduced me to her boyfriend Jason about 2 years ago. From the moment I met him, something felt off. Jason was 15 years older than Amanda, 43 to her 28 at the time. He wore expensive clothes, drove a flashy car, and had a condescending way of speaking to service staff that immediately put me on edge. During that first dinner together at a high-end restaurant, he insisted on choosing Jason dominated the conversation, talking mostly about his real estate investments and connections with wealthy individuals. When I tried to ask about how they met or their shared interests, he would give brief answers before steering the conversation back to his accomplishments. Amanda sat beside him, nodding and smiling occasionally, giving me looks that seemed to say, "Isn't he amazing?" I noticed Jason would subtly touch Amanda's arm whenever she started to share her own thoughts or experiences, as if signaling her to stop talking. She would immediately defer to him. It was a small gesture that most people wouldn't notice, but as her mother, I saw the power dynamic it represented. My daughter, once outspoken and independent, seemed to shrink in his presence. Over the following months, I witnessed a complete transformation in Amanda's lifestyle and priorities. She called me one evening and, to my shock, announced she was taking a break from medical school. After years of dedication and hard work, she was walking away from her dream. When I asked why, she explained that Jason had shown her what really matters in life, and that she wanted to enjoy the moment rather than waste her youth in libraries and hospitals. Instead of pursuing her medical career, Amanda began posting photos on social media of exotic vacations, designer shopping sprees, and exclusive parties. These were all funded by Jason, of course. My daughter, who once volunteered at homeless shelters and dreamed of helping others, was now obsessed with material possessions and social status. The transformation was heartbreaking to witness. I made several attempts to talk with Amanda about my concerns. During a lunch at my home, I gently suggested that perhaps she should consider completing her medical degree, even if she took a lighter course load. "Honey, you've worked so hard to get where you are. I just don't want you to have regrets later," I told her. This sparked our first major argument in years. "You're just jealous because I'm finally happy," she shouted. "Jason appreciates me for who I am, not for what I can accomplish. Why can't you just be happy for me?" Her words stung deeply. I had never been anything but supportive of her choices, even when they differed from what I would have chosen. To be accused of jealousy by my own daughter was both hurtful and confusing. As their relationship progressed, Jason became increasingly skilled at isolating Amanda from me. He would schedule surprise trips during holidays we traditionally spent together. He would forget to pass on my messages or claim they had phone problems when I tried to reach her. When I did manage to speak with Amanda, Jason was always nearby listening to our conversations. I could hear him in the background sometimes, whispering comments that would make her cut our calls short. My attempts to maintain contact became more desperate. I called, texted, and even drove to their apartment several times, only to be told Amanda was busy or not home. I left voicemails that were never returned and sent letters that received no response. It was as if a wall had been built between us, with Jason as the architect and my daughter as his willing assistant. The last 6 months had been particularly difficult. After my final attempt to visit their apartment, where Jason told me Amanda didn't wish to see me, I had heard nothing from my daughter. No calls on my birthday, no message at Christmas, Not even a text to let me know she was okay. I would check her social media accounts daily just to assure myself she was still active and well. Those months of silence were filled with sleepless nights. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering where I had gone wrong. Had I been too protective? Had I failed to prepare her for someone like Jason? I replayed our last interactions over and over, looking for clues I might have missed. The weight of her absence was a constant ache in my chest. I sent weekly text messages, always casual and loving. Just thinking of you today. Hope you're doing well. Saw a documentary on marine biology that reminded me of our trip to the aquarium when you were little. Made your favorite lasagna tonight and had enough leftovers for an army. Wish you were here to help me eat it. Each message sent without expectation, each met with silence. I will never forget the morning I received Amanda's call after 6 months of silence. It was a Tuesday, and I was having my morning coffee on the porch, watching the neighborhood come to life. When my phone rang and I saw her name on the screen, my heart leapt. My hands trembled as I answered, hoping this meant she was ready to reconnect. "Amanda, honey, is that you?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotions flooding through me. "Hi, Mum," she replied, her tone casual, as if we had spoken just yesterday instead of half a year ago. "I need a favor." Even though her first words were about needing something, I was simply happy to hear her voice. I told myself that this was her way of reaching out, that the favor was just an excuse to break the ice between us. "Of course, sweetie. Anything. It's so good to hear from you. How have you been?" I asked, fighting back tears of relief. "I'm good. Really good, actually," she said, an unusual brightness in her voice. "Jason and I need to use the beach house next week for our honeymoon. Can you mail us the keys or leave them with a neighbor? We'll be there Monday." Her words hit me like a physical blow. Honeymoon. My mind raced to catch up with what she was saying. "Honeymoon?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "When did you get married?" There was a pause on the line, and I could hear her sigh. The kind of impatient sigh she would make as a teenager when I asked too many questions. "We already got married, Mum. Last weekend. Small ceremony, nothing fancy. We only invited people who really matter." The casual cruelty of her words left me speechless. People who really matter. And I, her mother, who had raised her alone since she was 12, sacrificed everything for her education and happiness, didn't make that list. I don't understand," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "Why wasn't I invited? I would have wanted to be there, Amanda. You know that." "Mum, don't start with the guilt trip," she said, irritation clear in her tone. "It was our day and we wanted it drama-free. Besides, you and Jason never really got along. It would have been awkward." I sat down heavily on the porch swing, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. My only daughter had gotten married without me. I hadn't seen her in her wedding dress, hadn't helped her prepare, hadn't witnessed her say her vows. A fundamental moment in her life, and I had been deliberately excluded. "Who was there?" I asked, needing to understand the full picture. Was it really that small? "Just Jason's parents, his brother and sister, and a few of our close friends," she replied. "Like I said, small and intimate. Now about the beach house keys. Jason's parents were invited." The revelation was another knife to my heart. It wasn't that she wanted a tiny ceremony with no family. She wanted a ceremony with no me. "Amanda," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking, "I would have loved to see you get married. I can't believe you didn't tell me. Didn't invite me. I'm your mother." "Just send the beach house keys and stop being so dramatic," she snapped. "This is exactly why we didn't invite you. Everything always has to be about your feelings." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The daughter I had raised to be kind and considerate was speaking to me as if I were a nuisance, an inconvenience in her perfect new life. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. "Do you have any idea how much this hurts?" I asked quietly. "Mom, seriously, can we not do this right now? Jason and I have plans today, and I just needed to arrange the beach house. Can you help us out or not?" Her dismissal of my pain was perhaps more hurtful than the exclusion itself. There was no acknowledgement, no apology, not even recognition that she had done something that might reasonably cause me distress. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "I need some time." "What is there to think about?" she demanded. "It's just a house. We need it for our honeymoon. What are you going to punish me now?" "I just found out my daughter got married without me," I replied, my voice steady, despite the tears streaming down my face. "Please give me a few days to process this before we talk about beach houses." "Fine," she said. "Call me when you're done being emotional about this. We need to know by Friday." With that, she hung up. I sat on that porch swing for over an hour, the phone still in my hand, tears flowing freely. My coffee grew cold beside me as neighbors walked their dogs and children waited for school buses. Normal life continued all around me while mine had just been upended. Inside, I pulled out photo albums filled with Amanda's childhood pictures, her first day of school, her high school graduation, family vacations at the lake. In every photo, we were together, often smiling, sometimes serious, but always connected. When had that connection broken? How had we gone from being so close to this stranger who could hurt me so callously? I called in sick to work that day, something I rarely did. I couldn't face colleagues, couldn't engage in small talk or focus on spreadsheets. I spent the day alternating between crying and staring blankly at the wall, replaying Amanda's words over and over. "We only invited people who really matter. Just send the beach house keys and stop being so dramatic." The 3 days following Amanda's call were some of the most emotionally turbulent of my life. I cycled through shock, hurt, anger, and profound sadness. I barely ate, hardly slept, and found myself moving through my house like a ghost, touching her childhood photos and wondering how we had arrived at this point. On the second day, I called my friend Laura, the only person I felt could truly understand what I was going through. Laura and I had been friends since college, and she had known Amanda since she was a baby. She came over immediately, bringing comfort food and a shoulder to cry on. "I just can't believe she would do this," I told Laura as we sat in my living room. "What kind of person gets married without their mother, and then calls only to ask for the beach house?" Laura listened patiently, her face reflecting the appropriate mixture of outrage and sympathy. "Catherine, I hate to say this, but this doesn't sound like Amanda. This sounds like Jason's influence. He's isolated her from you, and now he's trying to use her to get access to your property." "But even if that's true, she went along with it," I replied. "She chose to exclude me from her wedding. She chose to say those hurtful things." "Yes, she did," Laura agreed. "And you have every right to be hurt and angry. But I also think you need to consider what your next step will be. Are you going to give them the beach house keys?" The question had been weighing on my mind since the call. Part of me wanted to refuse outright to make Amanda understand that actions have consequences. Another part worried that refusing would only push her further away, possibly severing our relationship completely. "I honestly don't know," I admitted. "What would you do?" Laura took a sip of her tea before answering. "I think you need to stand your ground. If you give in now, you're sending the message that she can treat you this way and still get what she wants. This isn't about punishing her. It's about respecting yourself." As the day wore on, I found myself thinking more deeply about love and boundaries. I had always given Amanda unconditional love, but perhaps I had failed to teach her about respecting others, about the fact that relationships require mutual care and consideration. Maybe by never establishing boundaries, I had inadvertently taught her that she could treat me however she wanted, without consequences. That evening, I sat on my bed and made a decision I would not be giving Amanda and Jason the keys to the beach house. It wasn't an act of revenge, but rather an act of self-respect. I needed to show both myself and my daughter that I deserved better treatment than I had received. But simply refusing wasn't enough. I wanted to send a message to make Amanda understand what she had done and what she was losing. I wanted to give her a wedding gift that might help her see the bigger picture, something that might break through whatever spell Jason had cast on her. I spent the next day thinking about what this gift could be. It needed to be meaningful, something that would remind Amanda of our bond and the years of love I had given her. It couldn't be petty or cruel. That wasn't who I was, and it wouldn't achieve what I hoped for. It needed to be truthful, impactful, and ultimately coming from a place of love. As I sorted through old photos and keepsakes, an idea began to form. I would create something that showed Amanda the history of our relationship, the sacrifices I had made, and the love that had always been there, even when she pushed me away. I would show her what really mattered, what she was throwing away, for a man who seemed to value material things above all else. While I was finalizing my plans, Amanda called again. Her name flashing on my phone screen sent a jolt of anxiety through me, but I answered with as steady a voice as I could manage. "Have you mailed the keys yet?" she asked without preamble, not even a hello. "No, Amanda, I haven't," I replied calmly. "And I won't be giving you and Jason the beach house for your honeymoon." There was a moment of stunned silence before she exploded. "What do you mean you can't do that? We already made plans. This is so typical of you, always trying to control everything." I took a deep breath, determined not to match her anger with my own. "This isn't about control, Amanda. This is about respect. You excluded me from one of the most important days of your life, and now you're asking for a favor without acknowledging how hurtful your actions were." "So this is punishment, real mature mom," she scoffed. "No, this isn't punishment. This is a natural consequence of how you've treated me," I explained. "I will, however, be dropping off a wedding gift for you and Jason tomorrow." "We don't need your gift," she snapped. "We need the beach house." "Nevertheless, you'll be receiving it," I said firmly. "Goodbye, Amanda. I love you." I hung up before she could respond, before she could hear the crack in my voice or the tears that had begun to fall. Despite everything, I did love her. That hadn't changed and never would. What had changed was my willingness to accept mistreatment in the name of that love. The wedding gift I prepared for Amanda and Jason took me an entire day to assemble. I started with a beautiful leather-bound album, the kind that would last for generations. Into it, I carefully selected photographs that told the story of Amanda's life and our relationship as mother and daughter. The first pages contained pictures from her birth and early childhood Amanda. As a newborn in my arms, her first steps, her first day of kindergarten with her gap-toothed smile. I included photos of her with her father, memories that I knew she cherished but rarely spoke of. There was Thomas teaching her to ride a bike, the two of them building a snowman, a family trip to Disneyland when she was 7. The middle section covered the years after Thomas died. Amanda at her first science fair, her middle school graduation with me standing proudly beside her, the two of us decorating Christmas cookies in our kitchen. I included a photo of her at 16 sitting on the porch with her first scholarship offer letter, her face alight with pride and excitement about the future. The final section showed her college years and her early medical school days. Amanda, in her white coat at her first clinical rotation, studying late at night with a cup of coffee and textbooks spread around her, volunteering at a children's hospital, dressed as a superhero for the pediatric ward. These were the memories of the daughter I knew, the compassionate, ambitious young woman who had seemed destined for a life of helping others. Alongside these photos, I included tangible evidence of the sacrifices I had made for her education and happiness. I included the receipt from selling my mother's jewelry collection, highlighted to show the date it perfectly matched the deposit for Amanda's first-year medical school tuition. I added copies of the second mortgage I had taken out on our family home to help with her undergraduate expenses. The credit card statements showing thousands spent on her apartment furnishings and medical textbooks. These weren't included to make her feel guilty, but to show her the truth about our lives together, about the choices I had made out of love for her. I wanted her to see that love isn't just words, it's actions, sacrifices, and unwavering support through difficult times. The most important part of the gift, however, was the letter I wrote to accompany the album. I spent hours crafting it, writing and rewriting until every word reflected exactly what I wanted to say. "My dearest Amanda," it began. "First, congratulations on your marriage. Although I wasn't there to witness it, I hope your day was everything you dreamed it would be. I have loved you from the moment I knew you existed, and that love has never wavered, not for a single day of your life. The album I'm giving you contains memories of a lifetime together, of the bond that I thought nothing could break. I'm sharing these not to make you feel bad, but to remind you of who you are and where you came from. The Amanda in these photos was kind, compassionate, and valued family above material things. I hope that girl still exists somewhere inside you. You asked for the keys to the beach house for your honeymoon, but I can't give them to you. Not because I'm being vindictive or trying to punish you, but because I need to respect myself enough to establish boundaries. When you excluded me from your wedding, and then called only to ask for the beach house, you sent a clear message about how little you value our relationship. I can't pretend that didn't happen. Instead, I've arranged for a young couple, the children of my co-worker, to use the beach house for their honeymoon next week. They're both nursing students working their way through school, and they couldn't afford a honeymoon otherwise. The joy in their voices when I offered it to them reminded me of you before you met Jason. I've donated the amount they insisted on paying to the children's ward at Memorial Hospital, where you once volunteered. I will always be your mother, and I will always love you. When you're ready to rebuild our relationship based on mutual respect and care, it'll be here. But I won't be used or taken for granted, not even by the person I love most in this world. With all my love, Mum." I sealed the letter and placed it inside the album, then wrapped everything in simple white paper with a silver ribbon. It was elegant, but understated, much like the relationship I hoped we might someday rebuild. The next morning, I drove to Amanda's and Jason's upscale apartment building. I had installed a small security camera near my front door after a series of package thefts in my neighborhood, and on impulse, I brought a second one with me. I quickly attached it to a potted plant near their door, angled to capture anyone approaching. I wasn't entirely sure why I felt the need to do this, but something told me I might want to see their reactions. I left the package propped against their door with Amanda and Jason written in my neat handwriting on the front. Then I drove home, feeling both a sense of closure and terrible anxiety about what would happen next. Later that afternoon, I checked the feed from the camera. At first, there was nothing, just the occasional neighbor walking past. Then around 2 o'clock, I saw Jason approach the door. He was alone, dressed in expensive casual clothes, looking irritated as he spotted the package. He picked it up, examining it with suspicion before taking it inside. For about 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly I heard a man's voice through the camera's microphone shouting so loudly that it was clearly audible despite the closed door. "What the hell is this?" Jason's voice boomed. "She's donated the beach house to some random couple. And what is all this about you being in medical school? You told me you dropped out because you hated it." I couldn't hear Amanda's response clearly, just the murmur of her voice trying to calm him down. Don't tell me to lower my voice, Jason continued. Your mother just screwed us out of a free vacation property. And what's this about a second mortgage? You said your mum was loaded, that beach house is worth millions, and you said there were other properties too. The argument continued, growing more heated. I heard phrases like, "You've been lying to me," and "This isn't what I signed up for" from Jason. I felt sick listening to it, but I couldn't turn it off. This was confirming my worst fears about Jason's motives. About an hour later, my phone rang. It was Amanda, and she was furious. "How dare you!" she screamed as soon as I answered. "How dare you try to ruin my marriage?" Jason is furious. What gives you the right to dig up old photos and financial records and throw them in our faces? Amanda, I said calmly, I simply gave you a thoughtful wedding gift that reflected our history together. If that caused problems between you and Jason, perhaps you should ask yourself why. You knew exactly what you were doing, she accused. You knew Jason would be upset about the beach house. Is that all he's upset about? I asked quietly. Or is he also upset about discovering that I'm not wealthy, that there are no other properties, that you were once a compassionate medical student instead of whatever you've been pretending to be? Her silence told me I'd hit the mark. Amanda, honey, please think about what's happening here, I pleaded. Is this really the man you want to spend your life with? Someone who married you with false expectations about your family's wealth? You don't know anything about him, she insisted. But her voice had lost some of its conviction. You don't know anything about us? Maybe not, I conceded. But I know you, or at least I knew you, and the Amanda I raised wouldn't have excluded her mother from her wedding for a man who only seems to care about what she can give him materially. I have to go, she said abruptly. Just stay out of my life. The call ended, and I sat there wondering if I'd just lost my daughter forever. 2 weeks passed without any contact from Amanda. I went through the motions of my daily life, working, shopping, talking with friends, but my heart wasn't in it. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a message or call that never came. I began to regret my decision to send the album and letter. Maybe I should have just given her the beach house keys and tried to repair our relationship later. Maybe I had been too harsh, too focused on teaching her a lesson, rather than reaching out with compassion. Then, on a rainy Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Amanda was standing there soaked from the rain. No umbrella, her makeup smeared by what looked like both raindrops and tears. "Amanda," I breathed, shocked to see her. "Come in, you're drenched." She stepped inside, hesitantly, looking around as if seeing my house for the first time, though she had grown up in it. I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. "Would you like some tea? Or maybe a towel first?" I offered, uncertain how to proceed. "A towel would be good," she said, her voice small and tight. I brought her a fresh towel from the linen closet, and she dried her hair and face. We moved to the living room and sat across from each other, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. "I guess you were right," she finally said, staring at her hands in her lap. "About Jason. About everything." I wanted to say, "I told you so," to make her acknowledge how right I'd been all along, but the broken look on her face stopped me. This wasn't the time for that kind of vindication. "What happened?" I asked gently. "After we got your gift," she began, clearly struggling with the word. "Jason was different. Cold. Angry all the time. He kept asking about family money, about other properties, about why I never told him the truth about medical school." She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. "I lied to him, Mum. I told him you were wealthy, that you had multiple properties besides the beach house. I told him I quit medical school because I hated it, not because he convinced me it wasn't worth the effort." Why would you lie about those things? I asked, genuinely confused. Because that's what he valued, she admitted. When we first met, he talked about how he only dated women from good families, women with connections and backgrounds that matched his. I wanted him to want me, so I created a version of myself that I thought he would love. The admission broke my heart in a new way. My confident, brilliant daughter had diminished herself to please a man who clearly didn't deserve her. The thing is, she continued, I think I knew all along that he was with me for the wrong reasons, but I convinced myself it was real. When he proposed, I thought it proved he loved me for me. But after your gift, after he saw the truth, he showed his true colours. I finished for her. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. 2 days ago, I found emails on his computer. He's been seeing someone else, a woman whose father actually does own multiple properties. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He said he deserved someone who hadn't lied to him, someone who could give him the lifestyle he wanted. I moved to sit beside her and took her hand in mine. I'm so sorry, Amanda. Not that your relationship with Jason is ending, because frankly, he sounds terrible. But I'm sorry you're hurting. The worst part is, she said, squeezing my hand, I cut you out of my life for him. I missed out on having my mum at my wedding for a man who never really loved me. How could I have been so stupid? You're not stupid, I assured her. We all make mistakes, especially when it comes to love. The important thing is that you're seeing clearly now. We sat in silence for a few moments, the only sound the rain pattering against the windows. Jason keeps saying the marriage isn't legal anyway, she said eventually. Something about the officiant not filing the proper paperwork. He's already moved his things out and is staying with this other woman. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of relief at that news. At least she wouldn't have to go through a difficult divorce. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. I can't stay in that apartment. It's in his name. I don't have much savings left. I was thinking maybe I could stay here for a while, just until I figure things out. Of course you can, I said without hesitation. This is your home, Amanda. It always has been and always will be. She broke down, then sobbing in a way I hadn't seen since she was a child. I held her close, stroking her hair and letting her cry it out. When she finally calmed down, she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I'm so sorry, Mum, for everything, for how I treated you, for what I said, for not inviting you to the wedding. You didn't deserve any of that. No, I didn't, I agreed. But I'm your mother and I love you. We can work through this. How can you forgive me so easily? She asked, incredulous. It's not easy, I admitted. I'm still hurt by what happened. But holding on to anger won't help either of us heal. What matters now is moving forward. In that moment, as we sat together in my living room, with the rain creating a soothing backdrop, I felt the first real glimmer of hope that our relationship might not just survive, but eventually thrive again. 3 months have passed since that rainy day when Amanda showed up at my door. So much has changed in that relatively short time, both for her individually and for our relationship as mother and daughter. After that initial conversation, Amanda stayed in my house for 2 weeks. During that time, Jason continued to harass her with angry texts and calls, demanding she return gifts he'd given her and threatening to sue for emotional distress. It became clear that staying in the same city where she might run into him wasn't good for her mental health. That's when I suggested she use the beach house for a while. Not as a honeymoon destination, but as a sanctuary to heal and regroup. She was hesitant at first, feeling she didn't deserve such a gesture after how she'd treated me. But I insisted, and eventually she agreed. It's just temporary, she told me as she packed a small suitcase. just until I figure out my next steps. Take all the time you need, I assured her. The house isn't going anywhere, and neither am I. The beach house turned out to be exactly what Amanda needed, away from Jason's influence and the memories of their relationship. She began to reconnect with herself. She would call me every evening, our conversations gradually becoming longer and more meaningful. She told me about walking on the beach at sunrise, about rediscovering her love of reading, about the clarity that came with distance from her old life. About a month after moving to the beach house, Amanda made a decision that filled me with joy. She was going to reapply to medical school. I never really wanted to quit, she confessed. I just convinced myself it was what I wanted, because that's what Jason expected. But helping people through medicine has always been my dream. I want to reclaim that. Her credits and previous coursework were still valid, and with strong letters of recommendation from her former professors. She was accepted back into the program with a January start date. The school was even closer to the beach house than to our hometown, so it made sense for her to continue staying there while she completed her studies. Alongside her preparations to return to medical school, Amanda and I began attending therapy together. It was her suggestion which surprised and touched me. "We need help rebuilding," she said. "I want to understand why I was so vulnerable to someone like Jason, and I want to make sure I never treat you that way again." Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, has been instrumental in helping us navigate the complex emotions surrounding what happened. She helped Amanda recognize patterns of behavior she had learned from Jason: low self-worth, materialistic values, emotional manipulation, and begin to unlearn them. She helped me understand how my own tendency to sacrifice everything for Amanda, without establishing healthy boundaries, might have contributed to our problems. Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional acceptance of mistreatment, Dr. Martinez told me during one session. By standing your ground with the beach house, you actually demonstrated healthier love than if you'd given in. The therapy sessions haven't always been easy. We've both shed tears, expressed anger, and confronted painful truths. But after each session, our bond feels stronger, more authentic, built on mutual respect, rather than just biological obligation. Amanda has been seeing her own therapist as well, working through the trauma of Jason's emotional abuse and rebuilding her self-confidence. Last week, she told me something that made all the heartache seem worthwhile. "I'm starting to remember who I was before Jason, and I like her. I really like her. As for me, this journey has taught me valuable lessons about love and boundaries. I learned that loving my daughter doesn't mean allowing her to treat me poorly. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand firm rather than give in. Most importantly, I learned that relationships can heal, even after significant damage, if both people are committed to the work of rebuilding." Amanda is now officially divorced from Jason. The marriage had indeed never been properly registered, making the legal separation relatively simple. She's slowly beginning to date again, this time with a much clearer sense of her own worth and what she deserves in a partner. "Next time I get married," she told me recently, "you'll not only be invited, you'll be walking me down the aisle. And we're doing it at the beach house with only the people who truly matter there, starting with you." Those words healed something in me that I hadn't even realized was still broken. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I realize that sending that wedding gift was one of the best decisions I ever made, even though it was painful at the time. By standing up for myself, I ultimately helped Amanda break free from a toxic relationship and rediscover her authentic self. Life is full of unexpected twists and painful challenges. The beach house that was meant to be a vacation property became a healing sanctuary. The wedding gift that seemed cruel became an act of love. The daughter I thought I'd lost forever has returned not just to me but to herself. If there's anything I want you to take from my story, it's this: love deeply, but love wisely. Establish healthy boundaries, even with the people you love most. And remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that ended up being the right one, even though it hurt at the time? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life lessons. And remember, it's never too late to heal a relationship that matters to you. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and wisdom in your own relationships.